Hello, I'm going to try to tell you the story of Easter using this piece of paper. Did you know that the people that recorded Jesus' life, Matthew, Mark, Luke and John, spent most of the time writing about the last week of his life? About a third of all the verses in those books are about the last week of Jesus' life. It's a very important week to Christians, and it starts on Palm Sunday until Easter Day, the following Sunday, and we call that Holy Week. As Jesus' work of preaching and teaching came to an end, he knew he had to go to the big city, Jerusalem, for the last time. And you know that Jesus arrived on a donkey, walking into Jerusalem on Palm Sunday. There were big crowds, and some people pulled off the palm branches and waved them around, shouting, "Hosanna to the Son of David, Hosanna to the King of Kings." And they threw their coats in front of the donkey as Jesus walked through. Now I'm just going to reposition the camera so that you can see the piece of paper. And so, the last week of Jesus' life, lots of things happened. During the week, he told stories and he discussed things with the leaders and the teachers of the law. And they didn't actually like what Jesus said. In fact, they disliked it so much that they decided they would make a plan to have him removed. And so they made a plan to actually arrest and kill Jesus. On the Thursday of that week, it was a very special day because it was the day of the Passover meal, which all Jews celebrated as a reminder of when Moses led them out of slavery from Egypt into the new land. But Jesus did something different at that meal, the Passover supper. He broke some bread, and he said that this bread represented or stood for his body. And when he poured out some wine for the disciples, he said, "This wine represents my blood." And Judas went out from the Last Supper, which is what it's become known as, because it's the last time Jesus ate with his disciples before he was killed. Judas went out to betray him. Jesus and the other disciples went out into a garden called Gethsemane, where Jesus was going to pray. And at that garden, Jesus was arrested by soldiers, and he was taken and tried. And various things were said against him, most of which was made up. But in the end, they sentenced him to death. Before they put him on the cross, they gave him 39 flogs or whips, with a whip with stone and glass and metal bits in the end of it. So that would have been absolutely awful for him to suffer. And because of that beating, he was so tired and exhausted that he couldn't carry his own cross. So someone else, a bystander, the soldiers made carry Jesus' cross. And as he went up the hill, there was already a hole ready. So they nailed Jesus to the cross and put the cross into the hole. And when they nailed him on the cross and stood it up, they put a piece of wood at the top, which was the crime that the person had committed. And it said, "King of the Jews." In our language, you might see the letters INRI. And there were two other criminals with Jesus, one on his right and one on his left. But one of them turned away from Jesus, insulted him and criticised him and called him names, said unkind things. But the other one said, "Shut up, be quiet. We deserve to be killed. But this man's done nothing wrong. And then he said, Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. And Jesus said that he would. The soldiers gambled for Jesus' clothes. There's 2 dice. They gambled with dice for his clothes. And Jesus was on the cross for about 3 hours, from 9 o'clock in the morning. And then at 12 o'clock at midday, he cried out his last words, "It is finished," which was a cry of victory, like he was saying, "Yes, I've done it." And then he breathed his last. The soldiers had to make sure he was dead, because normally people were on the cross for hours or sometimes days, but Jesus was there for only 3 hours. So what they did, they pushed a spear into his side, and John records that blood and water flowed. They didn't know it then, but we know now with all our medical skills, when someone dies, something happens in the heart and water and blood mix, and there's a blood-like solution there. When the crowds had gone away, some of Jesus' friends took his body and buried his body in a tomb of a friend that was made out of by cutting into rock. They put his body in the tomb and they rolled a big disc, like a big boulder, in front of it. And this all happened on the Friday. The next day was a rest day, the Sabbath day, when no one did any work. Then the next day, the 3rd day, Friday, Saturday, Sunday morning, some of Jesus' friends, some women, came to the tomb to anoint his body for burial. But the tomb was empty. Jesus had risen again. He'd come back to life. And the women discovered, and so did Jesus' disciples, when they went to see him, and days later, for 40 days, he appeared to them, they realised that death was not the end. And Christians believe that because of what Jesus has done, he defeated death. We need not fear death. And God can turn death into life. And we can know that we can live on in eternity. After we die, we can be with Jesus in heaven. And so, these pieces of paper should give us that word, hopefully. So Jesus died to give us life. And there's a tick there we could place by it. So I hope you've liked the Easter story with the piece of paper. As usual, I have some questions. I've got 10 today. See how you get on. Question 1. What do we call the Sunday when Jesus rode into Jerusalem on a donkey? Number 2. What day of the week was the Last Supper? Number 4, number 3, what did Jesus say the bread broken represented? And 4, what did he say the wine represented? 3, what was the bread? And 4, what was the wine? 5, how many criminals were crucified with Jesus? And 6, what did the soldiers do with Jesus' clothes? Number 7, how did the soldiers make sure Jesus was dead when he shouted, "It is finished," and he died? What did they do to make sure he was dead? 8, what day of the week did Jesus die? And 9, where did they put Jesus' body after he died. And finally, number 10, what happened on the Sunday morning? Okay, here come the answers. Number 1, Palm Sunday. Number 2, the Last Supper was on Thursday. Number 3, Jesus said the bread represented his body. And number 4, the wine represented his blood. And that's why Christians celebrate Holy Communion with bread and wine to remember Jesus' death on the cross. How many criminals were on the cross with Jesus? 2. What did the soldiers do with his clothes? Do you remember? They gambled for them. And number 7, how did the soldiers make sure Jesus was dead? Do you remember? They pierced his side with a spear. Put a spear in him, you could say. A spear in his side. 8, what day of the week was it when Jesus died? Friday. 9, where did they put Jesus' body? Do you remember? Put it in a tomb. We used the paper to say a tomb, and then it was empty. What happened on Sunday? Number 10, Jesus rose again, or Jesus came back to life. There. I hope you enjoyed our Easter story and our Easter quiz. Take care. Bye.